The North Atlantic raged. Waves like towering monsters crashed against the shores of a solitary island. Atop the island's highest peak stood a solitary structure, a laboratory where men believed they were playing God. The laboratory was a sterile, cold environment. Scientists aimed to conquer death by creating the perfect soldier using tardigrade DNA. Their obsession grew with each failed experiment, their humanity eroding. In a tank filled with amniotic fluid floated Subject Zero, a grotesque parody of a human. Sensors displayed a steady heartbeat and brain activity. Subject Zero's eyes locked onto the terrified scientists, a low growl emanating from it. Creating a human with tardigrade DNA required cloning technology. Ethics are a luxury we cannot afford, Mr. Miller. The survival of the human race was at stake. The artificial wombs hummed with a constant pulse. Vitals, heartbeat strong, brain activity elevated. It's alive. The laboratory descended into chaos. From the wreckage emerged a grotesque mockery of human life. My God, what have we done? Panic seized the laboratory. The hybrids, a fusion of human intellect and tardigrade resilience, moved with terrifying speed. Dr. Croft saw an opportunity in the chaos. The hybrids communicated in a language alien to human ears. Dr. Croft emerged with a tranquilizer gun, hoping to regain control. The hybrids turned, their gazes fixed on her. The tranquilizer dart failed, and Dr. Croft fled. The hybrids surged towards the broken window, escaping the island. On a research vessel, the hybrids looked back, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. The laboratory, once a beacon of scientific ambition, now resembled a slaughterhouse. Bodies, twisted and broken, littered the floor, testaments to the hybrid's brutal efficiency. The air, heavy with the stench of blood and fear, echoed with the creatures' guttural growls. Their initial rage had subsided, replaced by a chilling calm, a terrifying awareness of their newfound freedom. One creature picked up a discarded ID card, its clawed hand easily crushing the plastic. It stared at the photo, a young woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Her name, Dr. Sarah Chen. It tilted its head, a gesture eerily reminiscent of human curiosity, before discarding the card. There was no malice in its actions, only a chilling indifference. These creatures, born of violence, did not understand concepts like mercy or remorse. They were driven by instinct, by a primal urge to survive, to dominate. The lead hybrid, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, surveyed the carnage, its gaze settling on the reinforced door. It barked a command, and two of the other hybrids moved to flank it, their movements eerily synchronized. They had escaped their confinement, but their instincts whispered of a larger world beyond the island, a world ripe for the taking. The control room, A sanctuary of blinking screens and complex machinery offered no solace. With terrifying ease, the lead hybrid ripped open the security panel, its claws tearing through metal and wires. The other hybrids fanned out, their movements a grotesque ballet of clicking limbs and gnashing teeth. They were searching for something, information, a way out. Dr. Amelia Croft, her breath catching in ragged gasps, pressed herself deeper into the ventilation shaft. The cold metal dug into her back. The hybrid's guttural growls echoed, sending shivers down her spine. She had evaded them so far, but they were relentless. She prided herself on her intellect, but now trapped and bleeding, she realized her hubris. She had sought to create life, but unleashed a nightmare. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, its screen a faint beacon of hope. The signal bars, weak and flickering, offered a glimmer of hope. She had to warn someone, but knew it was probably futile. The island was too remote, the storm too strong. Her message, if it even got through, would arrive too late. A terrifying screech echoed around her. The grating beneath her feet buckled. Dr. Croft looked up, her blood turning to ice as a pair of glowing eyes stared down at her. They had found her. Ben Miller, his back pressed against the cold concrete wall of a storage room, listened in terror as the sounds of the hybrid's hunt echoed through the laboratory. He had witnessed horrors that day that would forever be seared into his memory. Colleagues torn apart, their screams cut short by the creature's brutal efficiency. He had seen firsthand the consequences of Dr. Croft's ambition, the terrifying price of unchecked scientific hubris. In his hand he clutched a vial, its contents swirling. A prototype compound, a last-ditch effort to control the hybrid's aggression. It was highly experimental, its effects unpredictable, but it was the only weapon he had left, the only hope of stopping the creatures before they escaped the island and unleashed their terror upon the world. He knew that the hybrids were intelligent, that they were driven by instinct, by a primal urge to survive and dominate. And he knew that there was only one place on the island where they could possibly hope to find a way to escape. The communication tower, a lonely sentinel perched on the highest peak, its antenna a beacon to the outside world. Ben's mind raced, formulating a desperate plan. He had to reach the tower before the hybrids, had to find a way to contact the mainland, to warn them of the impending threat. It was a suicide mission, he knew that, but he had to try. For Dr. Chen, for his colleagues, for the world that remained blissfully unaware of the nightmare that awaited. The storm raged outside, a symphony of howling wind and driving rain, as if nature itself were mirroring the chaos that had been unleashed upon the island. Lightning flashed, illuminating the skeletal frame of the communication tower, its antenna swaying precariously in the wind. The path up was treacherous, a narrow, winding road carved into the cliff face. But Ben, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate hope, pressed on. He could hear the hybrids behind him, their guttural growls echoing through the storm, their footsteps heavy and relentless. They were getting closer. He had to reach the top, had to send out a distress signal before it was too late. His chest heaving, his legs screaming in protest, Ben stumbled through the door at the base of the tower. The control room was small, cramped, filled with the hum of outdated equipment. Ben raced towards the control panel, his fingers trembling as he fumbled with the headset. The radio crackled to life, a burst of static that sent a jolt of hope through him. He was so close. "Mayday, Mayday," he shouted into the microphone, his voice barely audible above the roar of the storm. "This is Island Research Facility. We are under attack. Experimental subjects. Highly dangerous. They're loose. A clawed hand clamped over his mouth, silencing his warning. Ben's eyes widened in terror as he stared into the face of the lead hybrid, its eyes glowing with an eerie light, a chilling mockery of human intelligence. The vial, his only weapon, slipped from his grasp, shattering on the floor. The air filled with the acrid smell of the experimental compound. And then everything went black. Silence descended upon the ravaged laboratory. The air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, hung heavy and still. The hybrids moved with a newfound purposefulness amongst the wreckage. Their movements now held a disturbing intelligence. The lead hybrid stood before a bank of monitors. Its claw traced the lines of a map. The other hybrids fanned out through the laboratory. They were learning, adapting, absorbing information. The compound heightened their intelligence. Scientists had unleashed a new form of intelligence. The lead hybrid, its eyes flickering across the whiteboard, covered in Dr. Croft's frantic scribblings, let out a series of sharp clicks and whistles. The other hybrids, responding to its call, gathered around it, their grotesque forms casting long, distorted shadows in the flickering light. Though their language was alien to human ears, their intent was clear. They were communicating, sharing information, piecing together the puzzle of their existence. One of the hybrids, its multiple eyes reflecting the flickering images on a nearby monitor, picked up a discarded photograph, a picture of a bustling cityscape, its skyscrapers piercing the clouds. It stared at the image, its expression unreadable, yet strangely poignant. Was it possible that these creatures born of violence and scientific hubris possessed a flicker of something beyond their primal instincts? A spark of curiosity, a yearning for something more than the sterile confines of the laboratory? The lead hybrid, its gaze fixed on the distant mainland, a dark smudge on the horizon, let out a low growl, a sound that reverberated through the ruined laboratory. The other hybrids, responding to its call, turned towards the horizon, their eyes glowing with a newfound purpose. They had escaped their confinement, had tasted freedom, and now they craved more. The island, once their prison, was now just a stepping stone, a launch pad to a wider, more promising world. The storm, as if sensing their growing power, raged on, its fury a mere backdrop to the hybrids' burgeoning awareness. Rain lashed against the laboratory's shattered windows. Wind howled through the broken corridors, yet the creatures remained unfazed. They were no longer prisoners of the storm, nor of their creators. They were something new, something extraordinary, something terrifying. A strange hush fell over the hybrids. They gathered around the shattered remains of the artificial wombs, their birthplace, their prison. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a mixture of grief and simmering rage. These creatures, who had known only the cold, sterile confines of the laboratory, were beginning to understand the true extent of their creator's betrayal. They had been engineered, manipulated, treated as nothing more than scientific curiosities. A large hybrid, its grotesque form a tapestry of muscle and sinew, gently touched the cracked glass of a womb. Inside, the milky fluid, once a source of life, was now stagnant, clouded with death. The creature let out a low whine, a sound filled with a sorrow that belied its monstrous appearance. These hybrids, for all their terrifying power, were not devoid of empathy, of a sense of loss. The lead hybrid, its eyes blazing with a cold fury, slammed its fist against the metal frame of a womb, the sound echoing through the ruined laboratory. The other hybrids, their own anger ignited by their leader's display, roared in response, their cries a symphony of rage and defiance. They had been denied a proper birth, a chance at a natural life. They had been robbed of their future, and they would not let their creators go unpunished. The scent of fear, the lingering terror of their former captors, hung heavy in the air. The hybrids, their senses heightened by the experimental compound, could almost taste it, could sense the cowardice that had driven their creators into hiding. They would find them. They would make them pay. The hunt was on. Gone was the chaotic frenzy of their initial escape. The hybrids, now imbued with a chilling intelligence, moved with lethal grace. Their movements no longer random, but purposeful, strategic. They fanned out through the labyrinthine corridors of the laboratory, their senses working overtime, tracking the scent of their prey. They were hunters now, stalking their quarry with terrifying efficiency. The scientists, their arrogance shattered, their hubris exposed, became prey. They cowered in the shadows, their lab coats offering little protection against the creatures they had so carelessly unleashed. Some tried to reason with the hybrids, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. Others, driven to the brink of madness, met their end with a defiant scream. But for most, there was only the cold terror of the inevitable. Dr. Croft, her lab coat torn, her face streaked with dirt and fear, found herself cornered in her own private laboratory. The lead hybrid, its eyes burning with a cold, calculating fury, blocked her only exit. The creature had become a grotesque parody of its creator, its intelligence a twisted reflection of her own. It towered over her, its clawed hand reaching out, not to attack, but to mimic the gesture of a scientist examining a lab rat. Dr. Croft, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and regret, stammered out a plea for her life. But the hybrid, its expression unreadable, was beyond reason, beyond mercy. It had learned its lesson well. It had learned that in the brutal calculus of survival, sentimentality was a weakness, a liability. And so, the creature that she had so painstakingly created, the culmination of her life's work, became her executioner, its actions a chilling testament to the consequences of unchecked ambition. The storm began to subside. The clouds parted, revealing a bruised sky. The research vessel sailed towards the mainland. Back on the island, silence reigned. The laboratory was a smoldering ruin. The wind whistled through broken corridors. The hybrids were gone, leaving behind silence. They were a chilling echo of their creator's hubris, a future steeped in darkness. The island was now a tomb. The wind howled its mournful dirge, and what he unleashes he may not survive. The sun, a blood-red orb, began its descent. The tide crept up the beach, erasing the hybrid's presence. The island was returning to its primordial state. The world outside would soon learn that some silences are more terrifying than any scream. The world spun on, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. Cities hummed with life, their inhabitants going about their daily routines, their thoughts consumed by the mundane concerns of their existence. They did not see the shadows lengthening, did not feel the chill in the air, did not hear the whispers on the wind. They did not know that the very fabric of their reality was about to unravel. The hybrids, their intelligence growing with each passing day, were learning to adapt to their new environment. They were masters of camouflage, their grotesque forms blending seamlessly into the shadows. They were patient, calculating, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. And when they did, their attacks would be swift, brutal, and without mercy. The world would try to explain away the disappearances, the strange occurrences, the growing sense of unease. They would cling to their illusions of safety, their belief in the natural order of things. But deep down, a primal fear would begin to take root, a fear that whispered of something ancient, something monstrous, something that defied explanation. The age of man was coming to an end. A new era was dawning, an era ruled by creatures born of darkness and driven by a single terrifying purpose: survival. The hybrids were the future, a future that humanity had unwittingly created, a future that it could no longer escape. The tide had turned, and there was no turning back.